Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most common, yet so misunderstood parts of being human, anxiety. And our guide for this is Scott Stossel's incredible book, My Age of Anxiety, which is part personal story, part science lesson, and part historical deep dive.
Now, to really get what anxiety is all about, we're not going to start with some dry textbook definition. Nope. We're going to start with a feeling, by putting ourselves right in the author's shoes on what was supposed to be the happiest day of his life. Just picture this. You're standing at the altar. All eyes are on you, but instead of feeling joy, this tidal wave of pure physical dread just crashes over you. This quote gets right to the heart of a panic attack. You're putting on a public show of being happy, but on the inside, you're just completely coming apart.
And this wasn't just wedding day jitters, you know? This was a total mutiny of the body. Every single symptom here is another layer of terror, and it all builds up to that one single screaming thought, I have to get out of here. It's a feeling of being completely out of control.
Stossel's story is so raw and personal, but it really opens up a much bigger question, doesn't it? How many of us have felt some version of this? A moment where your own mind and body feel like they've turned against you. Is that a personal failure, or is it something bigger?
Okay, so let's zoom out from that one man at the altar and take a look at the bigger picture. Because the scale of anxiety in our world today is, well, it's pretty staggering. The numbers might just shock you. 40 million. Just let that number sink in for a second. In the US alone, that is almost 1 out of every 7 adults. That makes anxiety the single most common mental illness in the country, even more common than depression. And hey, this is not just an American problem. Far from it. When you look at the whole world, the stats are just as stark. 1 in 6 people, globally, will deal with a serious anxiety disorder at some point. It really is a shared human experience that cuts across every border and every culture.
And the fallout from this isn't just emotional. It hits the economy hard. We are talking about more than 300 million lost workdays and $50 billion in economic damage every single year, just in the US. This isn't some abstract feeling. It has huge, real-world consequences.
So we've seen how personal it can be, and we've seen how huge it is on a global scale. But that brings us right back to the central mystery. What is anxiety? Is it a disease? Is it a flaw in how we think? A spiritual thing? Believe it or not, this is a question we've been asking for thousands of years.
You know, this struggle to pin down what anxiety is, it's not new at all. In fact, it's rooted in this ancient tug-of-war between two really powerful ways of seeing the world, a debate that is still shaping how we think about anxiety today.
So, on one side, you have the biological view. Think of the ancient Greek doctor Hippocrates. To him, anxiety was a physical problem, a glitch in the body's hardware. He literally thought it was caused by an imbalance of fluids, like too much bile creating, and this is a quote, a wet, stinking brain. But then, on the other side, you've got the philosophical view. Think of the Stoics, like Epictetus here. For them, it wasn't a hardware problem, it was a software problem. It's not the event itself that messes us up, it's our judgment about the event. It's a bug in our thinking.
And this 2,000-year-old battle, right? Body versus mind, hardware versus software, it's still very much alive and well today. It's just been repackaged into a question that I'm sure sounds very familiar.
So, which is it? Is anxiety baked into our DNA, something we're born with? Or is it something we learn from the world around us? Let's dig into the evidence for both sides of that classic debate, nature versus nurture.
I mean, if you want to see the case for nature, just look at the author's family tree. Wow. It's like a genetic blueprint for anxiety, a clear, straight line of suffering passed down from one generation to the next. The pattern is just impossible to ignore.
So, case closed, right? It's all in the genes? Well, not so fast. Because what we get from our families is always way more complicated than just our DNA.
Let's look at the nurture side of things. Did the author inherit an anxiety gene, or did he learn to be anxious by watching his anxious mother? What about the stress of growing up in an unstable home, or even the stress his mom was under while she was pregnant with him? All these things in our environment can literally shape our nervous systems. Where we come from is just as important as what we're made of.
Okay, this brings us to our last and maybe most fascinating question. We've talked about anxiety as a disorder, a disease, a flaw. But what if that's the completely wrong way to look at it? What if anxiety actually has a purpose?
Charles Darwin, who actually suffered from terrible anxiety himself, he argued that fear is a huge evolutionary advantage. A little bit of anxiety is what keeps us from doing stupid things. I mean, think about it. The person who's a little anxious about heights is a lot less likely to fall off a cliff. It's a survival tool.
And there's this key psychological idea that shows exactly how this works, the Yerkes-Dodson law. It basically says that a certain amount of anxiety actually makes us perform better. Think of an athlete before a big game. 0 anxiety, and they get sloppy. Too much anxiety, and they choke. But that sweet spot right in the middle, that's where you find peak performance.
This quote from a leading expert just nails it, doesn't it? Anxiety is what pushes us to study for the test. It's what makes us practice for the big presentation. It's the engine that drives us to try to do better.
So what if we just reframe the whole thing? Maybe anxiety isn't a bug in the system. Maybe it's a feature. Maybe it's deeply tied into the very things that make us human. Our ability to imagine the future, to plan, to hope, and to really care about how things turn out.
And that leaves us with this powerful thought from the philosopher Søren Kierkegaard. Maybe the goal isn't to get rid of anxiety, to cure it. Maybe the ultimate human challenge is to learn how to harness it, to understand it, and, like Kierkegaard says, to learn to be anxious in the right way. Now that's a thought we're sitting with.